Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. I'm Tom Gorman, the Superintendent of Schools, and tonight's our 2021 to 2022 county approved budget. Next week at the Board of Education, the Board of Education meeting, the Board of Ed will have an opportunity to ask more questions and then officially approve it with or without some changes going on. So what we normally do, we typically go to different schools and we typically do more presentations, but because of the pandemic, we decided to have one virtual meeting. We have a few guests here in the audience, and people are going to be able to call in when we're done with the presentation to ask more specific questions. So thank you for joining us. So our mission here at the Ridgewood Public Schools is to provide a rich and challenging learning environment, enabling students to maximize their unique potential. And we do this through 4 different ways. We had a strategic plan committee a few years ago, and they came up with the 4 habits of learning: critical thinking, empathy, creativity, and resilience. And we tie all these things into our curriculum, and this is what helps push our curriculum, instruction, and assessment. We're in unprecedented times right now for the past year. About a year ago, we had to switch to the virtual online environment. We did that at a moment's notice over the weekend. The teachers were then teaching virtually. And since then, we've made modifications to that. In the fall, we opened up schools with a hybrid model, which meant that some students were online and staying at home, and other students were coming into school every other day. We made adjustments throughout the year, and I'm proud to say today we opened up with the 4th quarter with students coming in or having the ability to come in every day for the rest of the school year. So it went extremely well today. Talked to students, I talked to parents and teachers, and it was almost like the first day of school, bringing students back into school, seeing their classmates, and now they're going to be seeing them on an everyday basis. On a K-12 level, we have about 70% of the students in school, about 30% choosing not to come to school at the high school level. And at the elementary levels, we're down to about 10% staying remote and about 90% of the kids coming in person. And the middle school is right in between there. As Ben Franklin said over 250 years ago, change is the only constant in life, and we've all lived through that. Our lives have all been changing on a daily basis with so many different aspects, and schools are no different. But what it's done is, if you think about what I just talked about with our habits of learning, it's taught our children resilience, how to be creative, and our teachers too. They've been creative, they've been challenging kids critically thinking in different ways, and we're really proud of the progress we made this past year. Our school system is comprised of 10 different schools. We have one at Glen, which is a pre-K school, and then we have 6 elementaries, 2 middle schools, and the 1 high school. In those schools, we teach about over 5,600 students. Our per pupil expenditure is less than $17,000, which is extremely low, and we're proud of that fact. We have a teacher ratio of 13:1, and one of the things that allowed us to be so successful over this past year was that we moved to a 1-to-1 environment several years ago with Chromebooks, and kids, teachers, and even parents became more comfortable with this type of environment, and that enabled us to be very successful over the past year. There's lots of different reports out there, different social media sites that rank us and everything, but when you look at it overall, there's a consistent message that our schools are doing extremely well. And when you take out the magnet schools, the schools that pull in kids from all over different areas, when you pull those out, our rankings even go much higher. So we're proud of the job that our teachers are doing on a pre-K to 12 level and the quality of experience they're getting here. I constantly get messages when I was as a principal from students who graduated as well as parents, how well the kids are prepared for college and beyond. We offer a very rich curriculum with AP courses, honors courses, curriculum, co-curricular activities, clubs. Over 80% of our teachers are at the master's or the doctorate level, and our scores just bear out what we're doing here when we compare us on a national level. On an individual level, you see our students again are doing extremely well. They are national merit finalists. We have a number of students doing the AP exams, AP scholars, and consistently the same number of kids are roughly going to college. And we have kids going into the services, going to Bergen Community, going to Ivy League, and everything in between. So we're very proud of them. Just some highlights. We have many, many more we could be sharing, but just a few highlights that just happened this past year. a couple of years ago, we put a lot more time into the STEM curriculum on a K-12 level, and we really beefed it up at the high school. And we're proud that the AP Computer Science Female Diversity Award was given to us for this and acknowledging this fact. And these females are doing a great job. Some of these females are also on this event team that we started, and we have males and females on this team, and they were awarded the Lemonson MIT grant. They did a presentation at the board meeting about 2 meetings ago and did an incredible job. And you'll be seeing some more of the solar Aquatech portable bottles, hopefully on stores in the near future. But it's just an incredible job that they're doing, working with their teachers, working, basing everything off of their curriculum that they've done and moving forward. Again, we've had national merit scholarships, semifinalists, some more of the event teams. They were recognized in the regional competitions. Our music program is second to none, being recognized as such. We have students in all our world languages being recognized on national awards. We're very proud of that fact. Somerville was just recognized as a sustainable Jersey school, and they received a certification for that, meaning they're more of a green type of a school. And Ben Franklin, the students did really well in a competition that took place over at Bergen Community College and winning first place in this math counts competition. So great stuff that's going on, and this is all during a very difficult year. I'm going to pass this off to Ms. Polstra, who's our assistant superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Gorman. So it's my pleasure to speak to you tonight about what in this budget supports our academic program. First and foremost, as a public school, we are required to build our curriculum around the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. And you can see that coming up in 2021, there are several areas that have undergone revision. So this summer, our teachers will work to ensure that the courses in world language, visual and performing arts, and science are aligned with those new curricular standards. Additionally, we also will be purchasing instructional resources for our students. Some of this is just a natural online license renewal that needs to be done. For example, Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 need renewals this year. We will be purchasing new texts for new courses that are running that I'll talk about briefly, and also doing classroom library enhancements at our elementary schools, mainly in that area to bring our titles, to bring more diversity to our classroom libraries, so our students have access to a wider array of books. In terms of academics as well, professional development is really at the heart of what we do. Our staff is strongly committed to their ongoing growth and development. Our teachers really embrace the concept of being lifelong learners, and they continue to deepen their subject area knowledge and enhance their pedagogy. And what you see listed on this slide are some of the initiatives that are areas of focus for us in terms of professional development. And we continue to invest in our staff and in our teachers who, again, are so dedicated to our students and continue to grow in so many different areas so they can provide our students with the best possible classroom experience. You can also see that the budget will support some innovative academic programming. We continue to expand our AP offerings through AP Research and AP Seminar. And we are also leveraging some of our great spaces that have undergone enhancements, such as our recording studio and our maker spaces, to bring more classes into those spaces and to look for opportunities for interdisciplinary connections for our students. We also are creating new elective offerings this year. You can see those down at the bottom, and those new elective offerings are relevant, of interest to our students, and this budget will also support instructional resources for those new courses. And here we have certainly the highlights of a very strong athletic program that involved hundreds of students. And even with an abbreviated schedule and some disruption to our athletics, our students have done a fantastic job of continuing to be successful. And we're very proud of these accomplishments as well. And now I'm going to introduce Mr. Bisick to get down to the dollars and cents.
Good evening, Ridgewood community. I want to thank the Ridgewood Board of Ed, the administrative team, Dr. Gorman, all the support staff, allowing me the transition in from my prior district to learn the budget, learn the history of Ridgewood as I put your new budget together. So with that being said, let me start going over the basic budget overviews that are required every time you put together a school budget. Item number one is provide necessary district staff, academic offerings, curricular activities, transportation, improve instructional programs that meet all the contractual requirements and obligations, address school safety, responsibility, and of course, maintain the building and grounds that our students attend to. Stay within the guidelines of the New Jersey statutory state caps, which we have, and maintain fiscally responsible budget guidelines. Now, this slide lays out the comparative spending that Dr. Gorman mentioned early on during the presentation. As you can see, keep your eyes on the 1920 budgetary per pupil and the 1920 student-teacher ratio. It's itemized the most expensive districts down to where we are, and that'll be the next slide. As you can see, Bergen Academies is $28,000 per student on average. The ratio was 10-1. Franklin Lakes is 26 and change. Ratio is 8-3. Pascack Valley is 23 and change. Ratio was 8-5. So as you go down the list, you see the numbers decreasing slowly. The key thing is on the next slide where Ridgewood falls in. Right now, we are below state average. State average is roughly 17,000 and change for 1920. We come in at 16,568 at a ratio of 13 teachers per one student. At that rate, the Ridgewood community is getting the best bang for its dollar in the educational environment. And that fact is noted with the SAT scores and ACT scores. We're ranked in the top 5 in the county at 1289. So you can't beat that for pricing and getting the best dollar value you can at your education. So as Ridgewood continues this excellence, this is a good example of how it's done and why it's so important to maintain this moving forward. Now, the next slide is some of the key appropriations in next year's budget. First one is regular ed. That's your education for teachers, salary, supplies, materials, and instructional lease payments. FY22, the proposed budget is $35,533,920. It's up 3.09% from the prior year's budget. Special education, that's out-of-district tuition, related services, child study team, special education in district, instruction, and of course, transportation. As you can see, that's a big jump from the prior year. Right now for next year is $21,771,792. It's roughly a 33% jump. A lot of that is the support requirements for the special ed community and increased tuition rates, plus busing. Benefits, medical premiums, dental, PERS, DCRP, workers' comp, Social Security, and tuition reimbursement. It dropped 0.108%, and the big reason why is Chapter 44 entitlements have changed, and it restructured how things are budgeted, so that's a drop for us into next year's budget. Facilities, maintenance, custodial grounds, security, energy cost, summer maintenance and projects. It's up 0.24% or $10,550,946. What I did here was the district went through every line, scrutinized it with a zero-based budget, and were able to make reductions where we could to help balance the budget for next year and to reduce the tax levy. Extracurricular activities, after school programs, it's down 0.63%, and that's basically going in and reassessing the supplies that are needed because this current year's budget, we didn't need as much supply, so that carries into next year's budget, which in turn gives us savings. Capital and administrations. Administrations next. General admin, school administration, central office, IT, legal, auditors, architect. If we had an April election, election costs, communication cost, and guidance and media. The budget is down negative 4.64% or $11,209,815. Between basic cuts across the lines, the big reduction is basically 2 administrative salaries, myself and Dr. Gorman coming on board. Capital projects funded by capital reserves and SDA debt payments. It's down 45.08%. Don't be alarmed. Last year, we used 2.6 million from capital for capital projects. Next year's budget is 1.247 and change. That's why it dropped, okay? Other, that's student services, curriculum, professional development, community school, and other special schools is up 13.11% or 3,878,200. That's just programming. We're trying to increase the summer activities. So we're coming out of the COVID to where everyone's getting vaccinated. So we're hoping to get more turnout for the summer program. So that's why it's where it's at for enrollment figures, staffing figures moving forward. Grants and entitlements, Title I for at-risk students, Title II, professional development, Title III, ESL, IDA for special education, non-public state entitlements, donations, the CARES Act, ESSER II, and the CRF. As you can see, it's a reduction of 29% and change. That's because next year's budget, we're not going to get CARES. We're not going to get CRF, and we lost Title I. That's the big bulk of the reduction moving forward. The ESSER II money has been broken up into two budgets. I'll explain that moving forward. Debt service, principal and interest payments on outstanding bonds from previous referendums. The reduction is 6.82%. That's just a timeline on the principal payback, and each year you pay it back, it should be reducing. Next year is a 6.8% reduction. Next slide. Now, anticipated revenue. If you look at the far right corner, you'll see proposed tax levy increase of 1.99. So we kept the budget levy for the residents below 2%. So the FY22 anticipated tax levy for the general fund is $99,249,616. Tuition is roughly just over $1 million we expect coming in for revenue. Unrestricted miscellaneous, I made adjustments because of COVID, so I dropped it down to $1,527,060 to be conservative, just in case COVID lingers on more into next year's budget as we move forward. Interest on reserve accounts, pretty much flat, 5,000 and change. Other restricted miscellaneous, again, reduced because of COVID and its base of revenue. It's at roughly 523,000 and change. State aid, these are mandated from the state. Transportation aid is 620,535. Extraordinary aid is 1,556,345. The big jump is under category special education aid. It's at 3,896,003. It's roughly an $877,000 bump. Now I'll explain that more in the next slide, how that impacts us. Security aid, 447,742. Then get into the federal side, Medicare, they reimburse you for that, 20,361. Now you can see Title I for this current year is 173,624. Next year is at zero. We lose Title I. Title II is flat, Title III is flat. That's governed by the state. We won't get those actual numbers probably into early May, beginning of June. IDA Part B handicap, same flat number, 1,139,378. Now, getting into the CARES and the Coronavirus Relief Fund, you can see this year's budget was 158,630, 156,896, and next year it's zero. That's that big reduction you had on the prior slide. ESSER II, with the administrations and the Board of Ed, we broke that up into 2 years. So this current year, we budgeted 250,000 in this year's budget, and next year's budget's 299,867. That's to offset some of the spending for this year, getting kids back in school, summer programs to refresh any that might have been lost during the hybrid learning model. Then you have the next part is grants and entitlements. It's up at 722,046 from last year's 615,844. Debt service. As we pay back the debt service, that number keeps dwindling. So next year it's at 3,459,251 from the current year of 3,722,028. And then of course we have debt service type 2. That's from the state. Is roughly the same number, 134,499 for next year, 135,178 for this year. Now, anticipated revenue. Here's I want to kind of explain what goes on this slide. The first line item, you see budgeted fund balance. In this year's budget, they brought in from the prior year, 957,000 to offset the tax levy within the budget, keep below 2%. To maintain that In the FY22 budget, which is next year's budget, we brought over 1,575,539 to maintain under 2% for the tax levy. Capital reserve, as you can see, this year was 1,650,000. Next year is 1,242,837. That's at 45% reduction from the prior slide. Then you have adjustments for prior year encumbrances. This is done at the end of the year by the auditor on outstanding POs that go forward. So the prior year was 610 and change. This year is nothing, but at the end of this year, that'll get bumped into the following year. And then you have rents and royalties. I kept it pretty flat based on what's going on with the COVID. So it's 164,000 compared to 163,028 from the prior year. Maintenance reserve. They brought in 150,000 maintenance reserve this year to offset the budget. Next year, I'm anticipating that, so it's at zero. So the total revenue for the budget for next year, encompassing everything that goes into the budget, is 117,722,658. Reserve accounts. Right now, currently in the capital reserve, we have 1,934,325. Emergency reserve is 765,548, and maintenance is $500,000. Now, keep in mind on the capital reserve, as we open up next year's budget, that's going to be reduced by 1.2 million and change for next year's budget, just so you know, moving forward. Now, the unassigned fund balance. Here's the funds that we use to offset the tax levy to keep it below 2%. Legally restricted is 108,884. That's required by the audit from this prior year's audit. Unassigned excess surplus for 650,000. Another item required by the audit to bring forward. Then you have capital reserve, the 1.2 million we spoke about for capital projects. Take in the SDE funding, that's required by the audit. That's a 42,837. Then you have budget fund balance of prior year. That 257,000 is what they've been doing in Ridgewood year to year to help offset the tax levy. Then we brought across excess surplus at 408,809 to help reduce that even more, to keep on the 2%. And then the unassigned fund balance of 150,846 was the final piece to keep your budget at 1.99 going into next year. Now, your tax impact. We drop down to 1, 2, 3 to the fourth block down where it's tax per 100,000 of assessed value. Basically, it's $31.67 a month based on a house of that value. So it's up 1.89%. Keep in mind that the prior year you had a tax relief from the Board of Ed for 630,000. So that number kind of skews it because they went back into the tax levy, dropped it by 630,000, and then went forward. So my budget for next year is based on that reduction from this year into next year. Capital projects. If you're not aware, we have 1.2 million set aside in capital reserve. We're upgrading the high school. The entire electrical panel at the high school is being redone over the summer. That work has started now by getting the utility pole in place. We're getting a transformer platform in place. And then as soon as school breaks for the summer, we start the actual work and putting in that new switch station. We're also going to resurface the Ben Franklin Middle School track. And we have another 200,000 set aside to start replacing some of the outdated remote controllers for the univents. We want to make them dual purpose, so they'll be hardwired, plus be wireless as a backup to help in Somerville Art Wing, the kindergarten wing, Willard fourth grade wing, and the Ed Center to help regulate the air in the buildings in those wings so you can open up the windows, regulate the heat so you're not too hot, too cold, to allow for better air circulation moving forward. Now, the IT, without IT, everything we're talking about, especially remote, would not be possible. So the IT operating budget, all the software and licensings we need to support the district is 360,000. The internet voice, like you're seeing right now during this presentation, is 156,000. Maintenance and monitoring is 65,000. Training, PD, another 39,000. Time cards, that's the pay we use to keep people going, to fix things when stuff breaks down, is 39,000. Hardware, parts, supplies, 36,000. Third-party services, 28,000. So the total operating budget is 700,000 and 23,000. Lease purchases, these are ongoing purchases that we need to keep going to maintain the quality of education, to support the students and the staff with the Wi-Fi that we need, the Chromebooks and so on. So you have Wi-Fi upgrades, 450,000, computers, projectors, 445,500. Storage, network upgrades, 37,000, and legal professional services, 7,500, for a total lease purchase package of 940,000. All that is used to maintain the district to help, especially now in this remote learning environment. And then that concludes the slide presentation. Any questions, please? From the public, you can take questions, and anybody coming in online, please call in if you have any questions going further. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Just give him a second until he sits down.
Charles Riley, 448 North Maple Avenue. On the increased expenditures for special education, you noted there's a 33% increase in next year's budget, and that some of that is due to increased tuition payments. How much leeway does the school board have in negotiating tuition for other schools where you're sending special education students to those schools? Is there any leeway at all in negotiating?
There's very little leeway in what the private schools charge. The bigger impact is more so is the support services needed for the special ed kids, whether in district or out of district. That cost, you really don't have much to do. It's based on their IEPs. And that's how it breaks out. So the cost can go up, plus busing is going up, the average, but you don't have much leeway in talking to the schools to change the price. It is what it is.
So that increase really is really
Correct.
mandatory, basically.
Right. You can try to shop around different private schools, but if the IEP requires a certain type of school, you're kind of stuck where you have to go, and that's how it plays out.
Second question is, I know the school district looked at all its facilities over the last couple of years and came up with some rather large number needed to for HVAC equipment, some roofs and so on. Well, what's the status of that project at this point? Is that, I know it's going to be deferred.
Right now, that pending referendum is under review. So what we're doing internally within the district is we're slowly chipping away at that list. So this summer, we're taking care of some of the univents that need to be upgraded with the controllers. So it's Cat5 wiring, so it's hardwired in, plus the wireless backup, just in case you need it, to help regulate the airflow in those buildings. So step by step, you knock it off as you go forward. You're welcome.
So just to answer a little bit more on that. So yes, we have not officially talked as a board about the referendum, but that will be coming up hopefully. I'm not saying, I don't know about this year, but definitely in the fall, just to start talking about that progress that was made originally. But as Mr. Bicek just said, that we are starting to chip away at some of the smaller projects that we can do in-house. On a similar note, we are trying to do more and more programs in-house with special education. We've actually lowered the number of kids that are going out of district because we're able to provide a more quality product here in district. And the special ed programs team has done an incredible job doing that. And we actually see some more steps moving forward with that in the next year. All right. Any callers out there with questions?
Zero.
Okay, so we'll give that a few more minutes. Just to say what I was saying before, we had a great first day with students returning to school. We're very excited about that. I saw a lot of smiling faces today and a lot of great stories. I think we're going to see a lot more going forward. Some other exciting news, our girls volleyball team just won the states, and that was the first time ever. They won that today. And that concluded what we'll call the fall season, just concluded today with that wrap up there. And then the spring sports just started today, April 19th, with opening day for a lot of the sports. So we have, can you just pass me the flyer?
Okay, there.
We just mailed out We just mailed out a home flyer to everybody, so you should be getting that in the mail in the next day or two. It explains a lot of the things we just talked about and went over. It's a little bit different than you've seen in the past, and it has a lot of the components that were just brought up tonight. So we'll stay online for a few more minutes, but we will be doing another presentation at the Board of Education meeting next Monday night. Callers or people that are here live are allowed to ask questions again. And then the Board of Education will also be asking some questions, and we'll see how that goes. And then hopefully we'll be moving forward positively with that. Anybody else? Did you have any more questions? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody joining us tonight. This is a great evening. And we look forward to seeing you at the next board meeting. Take care, everybody.